have heard this that when like a lot of people give more for dharma, like in my culture also they give more for like giving, like for them the giving for dharma is like giving in temples. Because there are no like very few institutes which exist. So a lot of people say that like in generosity also there are like levels. So giving, when you give for dharma, then that's the top level, like giving. That's why I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people give in the temple. So most of the money goes into the temple, which is like access money going there, which could be utilized in other things as well.
Tini Quran tanda jaga ki rishu na asra jimba la de ni chula jimba dang jura chuchi jimba mai ba jura chuchi ni la jimba dang jura ni Quran zo rishu na la pewan na shi de gonde ka da nesa de mo yo ma was ni gomba de yo de zo jimba dang res ni jimba ge ne dan namba ta shu jura yang da be jimba namba ta shu de ni chuchi de zo chuchi gonde gomba yo de zo jimba dang de ni chi res 네, 안데 치즈만 미상만 있다데 지바 양다와래라네 베샤티기로스. 치드라서. 디테는 좀 뭔데 칼 베샤 뭐 쉬우차게 그랬다. 아니 디 베샤데 컨트롤 고엘을 하와레스베트. 라. 아니 치자 무이데 뭐네 치나 바 쪼거드르가 디텔 베샤 당나 디기로스. 디 카테레스.
네, 나 그런 있습니다. 당 어떻게 나치 농로를 시험에는 집에 기다리 때문에 쳐가지고 너무 같이 계좌를 상담해라. 약간 좀 받는 게 아니면 지기 라마도 도우들을 이제 받는 소리를 개와야 근데 견뎌는 이거 쳐야 딜을 연지 시를 간다. 그 라마나신 라마다 상대 나시도 요마라. 다 한다 되는 말좀 신신. 아 담에 그 제세 유도를 때문에 소리를 계좌 사야기 쳐봐도. 같이 대받아 당하는 지대야. 디디 가서 레와를 미버로지로 다가 가지 못하는 거라 예자마에로 내려 땡이가 쳐버지 가르치고는 지금 받아서 데들을 좀 받아는 것도 이 나올 디디 스토리한다고 순대기로 다 아니 지금 토삼을 미치디에 가지고 지금 추쇼도 상담으로 매일다 와이면서 장와이는 간지 직수적인 지금 24시 나오로 치기 자와잖아 치디들라 미상으로 아니 이제 받아야 돼 컨트롤 당해야 해서 되게 마시고 있는데 전화 인식되고 그래. 되게 진짜 relay ne de ko ta san ta de de ta ye ba ta zam za ko ba ta san ge di chi wo de dana ja ga la so mi sura ta bana de sa kha de do gom ba ta san da ya je ba ta ye nu ra ye de ya mya ka ro zu ta ni mi jo de la re me che na de sta yi ko chong che na ji na ro ji jo ro da wa ne ba ne ge bo de la be de ko ra re me de chi ni mo ba tadi gomba susu ra le ro peche ya ji bolle ne di 파도 소마다는 데로라 야 지게들 막 러브체 치데 그런 도제야 버제야 그러다 아니 조석이 수석이 뭔가 틀에 여기 미만 쪽으로는데 바로 같이 그랬으면 되고라.
So then similarly as in the Indian culture, in the Buddhist traditions and cultures, the base of the act of generosity, the one who receives this form of generosity, is explained that when you begin to donate or when you begin to offer donations or support to the spiritual community, then it is explained that the kind of root virtue that you accumulate from this is very profound. And this is the reason why Tibetans donate a lot of money to the monastic institutions. But then if we think carefully, this is also now being motivated by a sense of expectation, that I am donating this so that I can accumulate more profound fruit virtues. So this is not really a pure act of generosity if it is being informed by this. But from the other side, then it comes from a wise assessment of the situation wherein if I donate here, the money would never go to waste. It would actually go towards supporting and facilitating the spiritual practitioners that are in the monastic institutions to afford them accommodation, food and so forth. So there are two sides to it. And it is solely informed by this motivation that if I practice generosity by donating to these monastic institutions and temples and so forth, then I will gain, accumulate more profound root virtues. Then it is wrong, of course. But I don't know how it is in the Indian tradition. But now, even if Tibetans offer donations to these monastic institutions, then when the basic accommodation and facility of the spiritual practitioners, the monks and the nuns, are taken care of, then with the excess money that they have, the monastic institutions in the South India, which are the biggest learning seats, they actually set up like clinics, health camps, and so forth, and health camps for the neighboring Tibetan settlement as well as the Indian villages, free of cost. They organize these with the money that they receive, which are surplus to them. And they also open clinics which offer free treatment to poor people and very discounted treatments to poor people. So this is the approach that the institutions take with the excess money or the surplus money that they have. So these are the kind of approach that is evident in the Tibetan tradition. So of course, the monastic institutions, they run due to these donations that they receive, and the monks and nuns, they cannot actively work for money. They cannot actively work for money because they dedicate all their time towards the study and practice. So the monastic institutions do run on these donations that they receive, but the way that they approach these donations is if there is surplus, they always give it back to the community. They always give it back to the society that supports them. For example, during the time of corona outbreak and during the times of lockdown, then the normal people, the really poor people who live day by day on wages, they don't have any sources of income at that time. So the monastic institutions, they really came to the front and distributed lots of rations to the neighboring Indian villages, like sacks of flour for each family and packaged ration for each family, and even for poor Tibetan families, they offered support. So this is the approach that is present in the Tibetan tradition. Yes. So then, in the Tibetan tradition, when the monastic institutions receive these donations, then it is not only kept in the monastery itself. They always try to actively put the money to use, which could benefit not just the monastery, but the neighboring communities as well. And we look, this kind of is inspired by the Dalai Lama himself. The Dalai Lama receives a lot of prize money, award money, and then donations, and then also donations in the form of offering lifelong pujas. So there's a lot of donation that the Dalai Lama receives, but it is not kept in the Dalai Lama's trust. These are immediately sent to used to support the elderly in the Tibetan community. support socially marginalized groups. And then he also goes towards the construction of new monasteries and new temples who do not have the fund to build it on their own. So this is the way in which the donation money is circled around the community itself. It comes from the community, goes and then comes back into the community again and again. So any other anyone else would like to share? Yeah.
I have a question. A lot of time, big companies which are like maybe exploiting the environment, they have like CSR money coming and they donate. Is there anything like is that money good, or if we use that with good intention, like how do we use money which is coming from exploitation?
How do you use the money you receive from corporations in the form of CSR?
But you know that like not everyone is exploiting, but you know that some.
Yeah, that money you feel it comes from.
Like say the first, like some oil and gas company donates to the Dalai Lama Foundation.
Teniyo da tiwa dirt. Tizani tsongiji dineman chimbo de dera. Bena chashana num dunkin songro. Da dezogi ni pesha sadan jira. Kunzo ni ngui kurup chedam di pe suda matimbar jiris. Inaida kunzo chimdi chenjira. Ni CSR la ni corporate social responsibility. Chizolo ma injimi ji jaja daga shindip jagore la ni chimdi tembeb chesara. Da kunzo shindip maja kame chigir. Da pena chashana sra dindegi num da ni gas kira company chimbo de zogi pesha kuruchi jodi da kunzo pa shindip jagora. Shindip jayo de zamo kunzo chogi tepza roji la shindip jamna sra. Ngui lesa di da pet kunwe nyeba jira kurup chedaya tsuda madiba jini ligiras. Tene dindegi tsobaji ngui shindip jana sra. Ini nganzo ki da pena chashana kunzo chogi tepza roji la shindip jana sra. Ngui jimba tangwa sta. Jimba di len rongwa rebe ma rongwa rebe es.
konzo kadisa diba shibu chimsa
Tanda peto wachila pena chashana tanda kunzo num dunyi da zoyi na pigi la da lungba di nang damla de yi mi nang da zupa pu chongsep da zupu shing na che dame da chigyo ra kunzo ani di tsuda ma tuwa da wachila was ngui sadan chira dene sa jugi ngui di jimba tangyo na tsu usra ina nga zogi jimba tang jugi ngui di len rungwa ra ma rungwa ra es.
Jadi punya di gunung lerah di berara. Kalau punya di sana nanda yang cici coba dah sama cici punya ni, cici lawa cici berara. Jadi kada ler, jadi masa ini gunung. Dan kerana malah ni tesho malah ni pagi ni pasal sacu beras, ni ada saya cici bila kangen cici ni, ni itu kemana? Kerana ada cici punya di bawah kan, jadi kayak ini lah.
So this is very difficult to kind of explain simply, that there is a simple solution or a simple explanation for this, because here like law comes into place, and then the intention comes into play. So generally we say that if the money or anything is earned through wrong livelihood, then generally one should not accept such things. But then even then, there could be a moment wherein, even if this comes from these earnings come from a wrong livelihood, there could be a moment wherein during the act of giving it, there is a pure sense of motivation. Then it is acceptable in those instances, because everybody has to have that chance too. So it's not a simple thing to explain, or there's no simple solution to such a thing, because the law forces the hand of these corporations to give this money, and then necessity of the foundations to receive funds also forces their hand to accept money. So it's not a simple thing to explain. Yes. So comes from the exploitation of people and through the suffering of other peoples. And when it is given to you, then now it is your responsibility to put this money to good use. So if you use this to alleviate the suffering of others, to help those people who are being exploited, then I don't think morally there is anything wrong in such a thing. Yes. Questions?
That's just a comment. Maybe generosity could also include the idea of personal responsibility before being generous. So, for example, if someone acts out of a lot of generosity without taking care of their personal obligations towards their family, for example, could be a pretty irresponsible act. So maybe, yeah, I don't know if there's a little caveat there where, yes, generosity is important, but have some of that responsibility in it too.
Tene tagi nganzu jimba ki namba mambo sungwas. Ta sansingi jimba, chambe jimba la mambo sungwas. Ina jimba tanga la susu gergi yorwa. Ani gen la ora da. Gergi gen ro yo jo rashi gergi gen chingura. Pena chashan susu pama binchi la dewa gi gen ro. Susu ki korla yo jo chobo da binja da zo la gen ro chingura. Ti tsangma le dang chine ra. Ani jimba tangi ni shen la bachi che jo ra. Ti stakda ma de ro jo ngus. Chezan jimba la du zamba ra. Susu ki gen de chimba ma che jo ra thambo. Ti de chi ni tanang de chi kurgur wes.
그래서 되게 채우라라. 소소 집에 배는 게 요즘 처음 때시나. 다간산이 도를 사고 어떤 거를 매는 가게 되거든요. 그래서 배신 누구 제가 가게. 세상에서 되게 남 터치 쳐야 돼. 재미를 그래. 재미를 벌레 제가 지난 회도 듣는 거 제가 말하라. 그런데 배는 일단 양이 버리는 거 쓰게 된 거예요. 배 똑같은 거. 그러니까 이게 내가 숨이 길어. 이제 지난 좀 받아 보여야 되는데. 그때 미 사무실에 지컬어다. 지난 야보를 그런 강수들이 진이지 인사를 아니 내가 지금 맞다고 해야 되지 내 편에 버리시는 건 아니 그런 거 그래 이거 참 지금 맞다고 해서 근데 그걸 그래도 바빠 못 가져 쓰는 사람 근데 예매를 하면 가지고지라 진짜 이제는 싫어요 말 아니 그 냠내다 라마지 무슨 말이지 그런 냠내 집이 그다 참아지 아니 집이 지마다 그래도 그런 잡바 못 가지 제가 미쳐 있어요 근데 그 이제 뭐지냐 나 지금 매달 그런 방법이 나야 방법 쓰시고 근데 그래서 수수수수 있다 해라. 이제는 뛰어가려면 이미 잡아야 말라.
So of course, in Buddhism, the responsibility to think for oneself is always on the practitioner themselves. One is never advised to follow the teachings blindly. And of course, there is an element of wisdom that is needed in order to cultivate all forms of practice. And this wisdom comes only from your own personal experience, from your own personal investigation. So then, if you have attachment towards your personal relations and you have a sense of responsibility, then you need to be wise in your approach to practicing generosity. And this is evident in this famous story. The great yogi of Tibet, Milarepa. Milarepa has nothing. He has just a walking stick and a ball that he has to ask for alms. That's the only thing he has. And then Milarepa begin to gain like fame in the neighboring villages. People realized that this was an enlightened master. So one person got really more inspired by that. He was a rich lay person. And then he said, I'm going to follow in the footsteps of Milarepa now. I'm going to let go of everything and I'm going to practice generosity. So then he followed in the footsteps of Milarepa. And then after a while, as he gave away everything he had, he still hasn't let go of that sense of attachment to these things that he gave away. So then he has nothing now in the end. He is now almost a beggar at that point. So then he began to complain that I was inspired by Milarepa, but now he was a beggar even before. Now he has turned me into a beggar as well. So you need that sense of personal investigation all the time. Otherwise, blindly following, saying, being inspired, it doesn't help at all.
그런 게 가서는 제목이 시시시고라. 그 시에딩 얘기를 집발하는 가르쳐주느라 이 순서를 계속 봐주려고 그래서 이제 야매 지기는 상황을 대신에 안절을 가는 데서 양갈아지라 가지고
So then as I begin to explain the perfection of generosity, and this is how you should approach it, and then without investigation you begin to give away everything, then maybe it might be the case that I also be accused like Milarepa was.
아노네 가래는 지금 미들로 세대된 거라. 그래서 인심이 때워라고 말다. 그래서 때워 있는 그런 넘버 다 지다 바기는 팬비상 받아. 대배 대바지는 그래서 대배 그런 거라. 제가 가서 이 깨달으면로나 아니 매파시 때는 가서 지금 내게도 매매거든. 그래서 인심이 친구가 막 가르치는 전이라. 어디에 봐도 수술을 배도 그래 왔더니 상태에 되는 거라. 이거는 수술 남기면 나한테 봐.
So then you really need to use your own intelligence, your own wisdom, and this comes from a personal sense of investigation, a personal sense of honesty about how much can you really give. And so then it's very important to adopt what we call in Buddhism the middle way, wherein you do not really give into the extremes immediately. You always have a sense of balance in your time, in your moments of inspiration. You always try to ground yourself, to be more discerning. So when you do that, then maybe these things do not happen. So in any act of generosity, the motivation is what counts. It doesn't matter that the motivation is what counts. Do not do it simply out of a sense of inspiration that some people did so and then I'll get fame. Then people will look at me in a different way if I do this. If you do it, if your motivation is informed by these things, then the act of generosity is not a pure one.
So 그 미나라 이제 표현이라 이제 아니 정말 이랬어. 근데 이제 막 건드려 주고 미 주발 주미표라. 지금 내가 다 미직 정치 양계로 이렇게 주미 주발 담들 많이 바빠야죠. 아버들 배 주무치 않는데 마음에 들게 말도 좀 지르지 그래서 공 있어야 되는데 딱 어디 먼저 무시하지 표현이잖아. 나 그거 뭐냐라. 나들이 이제 주제기로 아마도 그래서 공도 계시고 말도 짱하고 약고 이 부위에서 그렇게 이제 주제는 딱 이렇게 다 동네에서 부위지. 나 방법이 이제 그래 개부지다 부위에 대해 민감식 모델을 하듯이 모델 미상 좀 주고 있는 거 부위라. 나 공도 부사기 사례들이 지금까지. 아니 딱 저기 일단은 그런 넘버 담아지라. 그런 넘버 담아지기 거네. 아니 얘 인간들 때문에 집어도 지대 로아들 많이 지다는 마음이 부위에 가다는 지금 매일 나서라. 지금 싫어하고 뭐 배야 내려라리도. 여기 아니 그런 넘버 담아지게 부위서라. 나 그래 간지만 되면 비슷해 비슷해 사이즈 공부 인기를 내려주면서. 근데 이제 아니 사이 제라타를 그가 나한테 미사 추구기 부셔지기도 세다 뭐 가는 공치를 쳐서 부셔지 정말 매버자. 거기 방으로 되게 조주라 어디 공직만 되면 그 마음이 싫은 거야. 가리는 민 상도 봐서 그거 지금 돈도 다 신발 그 상마시다 가지고 그거는 나보다 미리게 막 니마도 내 일이 나타나서 비려. 근데 이게 따라 되게 오늘 되게 중요한 거야. 근데 지나가도 지금 매체도 개만했네.
So then I think maybe if I tell you this story, it might or might not appeal to the Western sensibility. But then in Tibetan Buddhism, we offer Buddha lamps, with which the act of lighting a Buddha lamp is to illuminate the darkness of ignorance. And you by that act of lighting a Buddha lamp, you wish that the darkness of ignorance be dispelled in the mental continuum of all sentient beings. You do it with that intention. And it was the case that in Tibet, that there was a family who was rich, and then they were lighting up Buddha lamps. And when the rich people but their motivation was like, it is a form of prestige for us to light these butter lamps, and we have to light as much as we can, and in gold and silver cups, in order to show our prestige, in order to kind of stamp our prestige on the rest of the people. But then at that same moment, there was a poor man, and he came to light a butter lamp, and he had only the money to light one butter lamp, and he couldn't afford, of course, gold and silver cups to light these lamps in. So he had like an earthen clay pot, a clay cup in which he was lighting this. But his motivation was pure. His motivation was exactly that he wished that indeed all forms of darkness all forms of darkness, of ignorance in the continuum of all sentience being be dispelled by this act of me lighting this butter lamp. So he did it with that intention. Come the next day, the rest of all the other butter lamps, they have been wiped out. They were no longer burning, but only that butter lamp, the poor man's butter lamp, it was still lit. So it was a funny thing, that it was a strange thing for people to see. And then when they asked, whose butter lamp this is, and then they realized that it was this poor person's, and his intention was pure. So these are the kind of signs that we talk about in Buddhism. When your intention is pure, these are the kind of signs you see in your offering. How much this appeals to the Western sensibility is doubt. It's questionable, but this is to highlight the point, the importance of intention. Tini manzo indidole chungmune chena 공켜버렸어. 저 제와도 제는 공침버려야 chungmune nyamlen chena 공켜버렸어. 아니 냠는 지기여도 제 또에는 공침버려야 So there is a saying in Tibetan, seeing like these are common things that one sees, that if you really want to practice the Dharma, then it's a very inexpensive affair. But if you want to show that you want to practice the Dharma, then it's a very expensive affair. So then this ties into the point that is made in Buddhism about how important it is to train the mind, how important it is to have an understanding of how the mind works. Without that, then like when you say you have to practice a certain code of conduct, then there is a verse which says for some morality and code of conduct or ethics is a form of suffering. For some, it is not the case so. Why do rules and a sense of morality feel so constricting for some people? Because their minds are not trained. They do not really know the nature of their mind. So then they feel like these are rules that I have to follow all the time. Whereas if a mind is trained in the practice, in the mind, and a person understands the working of the mind, then he or she does not need these outside rules for him or her to safeguard against engaging in negative actions. So it all comes from an investigation in the nature of the mind itself, and then training oneself in the positive qualities of the mind. Yes.
그런식이 네 디즈라야 내가 터버티 고였다. 봐. 세상 아니 누가 그런 시와 늘 파저다 가는 가님이. 봐. 정말 이게 지금 쓰는 어떤 시고야 지고야다. 세상에 봐. 제가 무슨 배 계시고 있다. 다 이내야 간다 가서 삼죠. 나야 무슨 가르쳐도 파기를 맞서는 지금 거죠. 세상 저기 수수기 치는 시와에 미신발을 신발을 나 쳤다. 봐. 수소도 그래야 보면.
So then, this is the importance of having a sense of morality, having a sense of ethical conduct. We should not engage. We should not. We should not engage. We should not have a sense of morality that is informed by a sense of fear. Because normally this is the case. We have a fear of the law, and that's why I'm not going to do this or that. Morality is not like that. Morality comes from the conviction that if I engage in this, irrespective of whether there is someone else or not who sees me, in the end this will bring me suffering, so I won't engage in these things. This is the meaning of developing a personal sense of morality that is outside that is not contingent upon man-made laws or the fear of man-made laws. So then, if you are able to adhere to a morality based on safeguarding oneself against the 10 non-virtues, then do we really need that fear of police, jurisdiction, man-made law? We do not operate simply out of a sense of fear of these things. We operate out of a sense of integrity ourselves. So then the question arises, even if I adhere to such a sense of morality, if other people do not have this kind of morality, then what is the point? This is not the attitude to adopt, because human beings are by nature empathetic people. There might be one or two instances wherein a human being transgresses and acts aggressively towards you, but then if you still adhere to your morality, a sense of ethical conduct, then you can begin to inspire other people, because it gives them the opportunity to think that not everybody retaliates in this manner. So this is the basis upon which we can achieve a sense of peace and sense of harmony in society. Yes. So then we need to think then, like, can we really picture a person who safeguards oneself against the 10 noble virtues ever coming into prison? Then this is impossible, because when we look at if you do not kill anyone, then you wouldn't be in prison, and then so on and so forth, lying and so forth. So the people who end up in prison are the people who do not adhere to a basic sense of morality. So if you have safeguard yourself against the 10 non-virtues, then a prison is not needed in the first place. Man-made law is not needed in the first place. Yes. So then, even if technically in the law these transgressions are known by different names, different terms, but in essence, in their meaning, it's just a transgression of the basic code of conduct of safeguarding oneself against the 10 non-virtues. For example, you can begin to say slander in legal terms when you engage in divisive acts, divisive speech, and what you call harsh words. Then you begin to end up in prison. Then you use terms such as embezzlement, misappropriation, when big business people engage in stealing funds from the company and using it for personal purposes. But this, in essence, is the basic act of stealing something that does not belong to you. Yes. So if we really want to see a transformation in ourselves by listening to the teachings, then just listening to the teachings will not help you at all to transform yourselves. You need to now think for yourself, contemplate it on your own. If this is really the case, would adhering to this simple code of conduct help me live a life that doesn't put me in prison, that doesn't put me at odds with the law, that doesn't put me in conflict with my fellow human beings? So you need to kind of contemplate this in this manner. Otherwise, just listening to a teacher, hearing this wouldn't help. You need to come to that understanding yourself, that conviction yourself. Yes. So then the question I'm going to ask you now is adhering to the morality of safeguarding oneself against the 10 non-virtues a beneficial thing or not? Yes or no? Is everybody able to understand the question? Yes? The question was, do you think that it is beneficial to safeguard oneself against the 10 non-virtuous actions as a form of morality? Pujaji? So then this is the worldly point of view, wherein we simply ask, is it beneficial for me as I live my life? So then if the answer is yes, then from the dharmic perspective, it goes further than that. Then you are active, as you guard yourself, safeguard yourself against, guard yourself against the 10 non-virtues, then you begin to actively engage in virtuous acts, which helps you to accumulate root virtues for yourself in this life as well as for the next life.
그래. 그래서 파기디 스미디 고추를 따라 소용. 그래. 그리고 그것을 먹으려면 하는 좋아해. 이내야 루니디 거 튕겨져. 그래. 또 먹어야지 이제 그러나 재미있게 그래서 배워서 상황 배워야 살게 배워야 와고. 그래. 팅한테 사제 잡을 때만 디기 내가 지는 디기 루니 거는 팅는 게
So then the point that is being made in that situation is exactly the same. That you would not end in prison just if you adhere to this moral conduct, moral code of conduct. You are not, in these cases, they are in prison not because they transgressed any of these 10 non-virtuous code of conduct, morality. They are there because now this is the limit of man-made law. It could be interpreted and it could be misused. That's why it's important to have a personal sense of morality. Because the one who jails these people, they are doing it out of a sense, out of a lack of morality. So this is the point that is being made here. So this is the point that is being made. The limits of man-made law. If we are always informed, our sense of morality is always informed by a sense of man-made law, then it can be interpreted in many different ways, and it could be misused to exploit, to abuse, and to imprison. Whereas if everybody is informed by a personal sense of morality, which comes from a sense of conviction and based on personal experiences, then these situations will not happen, wherein people are unjustly imprisoned. Yes, but this does not come from the fact that Aung San Suu Kyi or the Tibetan political prisoners transgressed a code of conduct. They are wrongly. Of course, that's not the point that's being made. The point is, the reason that they are in the prison is not because of their sense of morality. This is the point that is being made. One cannot begin to deny that reality, that wherein people could be unjustly imprisoned. But you look at the other side too. Why are they being imprisoned? Because there is no sense of morality on the part of the jailers, of the oppressors. So then if I imprison you unjustly, then of course it's no fault on your part. Now, why would I do this? Because I do not have any sense of morality, right? So still, the importance of morality is still there.
Just observation, because both Slovenia and Tibet had political prisoners when Slovenia was moving out of Yugoslavia. Many of my friends were in prison, and the motivations and the stories behind each of the imprisonments was quite different. Some were young rebellions who just wanted to fight the system and did something, I don't know, shouting on the streets or something. And some were really contemplating the situation, wanting the best, talking with others, reflecting things, and risking their life for others. And I see similarly in Tibet, some are not trying to do anything provocative. They're just reflecting, and if people come to there, they become influential and get moving in prison. So while others could be young and frustrated and still want to preserve what you see there is very good. There is still selflessness in that, but there are so many different stories. This is the point.
And the question?
No.
No question, okay. The sulla tunishini to kajam kron Slovenia nerwa. Ni pödan Slovenia nijala chapsu tsumba mo pöris. Ni chapsu tsumba ki nedang jora. Ni 진 간디로지 보라 좀 뭐지 그래줘라 어디 배 접수 좀 맞으면 직접 용거 말했어 가시 로춘주에서 뭐 차차고 이거라 차차고 좀 많이 상랑도 와도 좀 자랑도 좀 뭐지 그래서 가시에니 발리위랑 배니 좀시 수수기 하다 리숑 냐자치에 지도 명 자민도 좀 느끼듯이 수수기 비게 좀 안동이도 좀 느끼듯이 왕의 당이는 느끼듯이 다시 지도 좀 양 좀 하는 거 좋아요 그래서 지금 그런 제 내당 빼면요 그래서 접수 거기 yes
We're talking about morality as a perfection.
yes
I didn't understand what it means. Like, is it just like not performing the 10, abiding to the 10 non-virtues, or it's more to it? What does it mean?
다단단한 수림 넘버다 왔송알아줘라 저기 수림지 버진 거를 시기를 왜서라 기스 수림이 버진 거를 시기에는 미교와 쭉이 수림 송아줘라 딜을 하고 수림이 버진 시기를 왜서
수도 많이 지나간 들리에 얘는 당당 없다 이 집에 가지 되더라 아주 주셔게 되는 수도 빠지게
So this we will cover in the actual discussion of the morality as a perfection. But this came from our discussion about what is the importance of developing a personal sense of morality first, rather than always a fear of man-made law.
다른 제선 준비 방식은 어디라 저도 도도는 네가 지고 있는 것도 좋아지는데 내가 저 지기 상주 같이 시시라 네가 가지고 점점 가서 틀죠 이거 뭐들이 다른 집발에 되는 건다 하고서라 수수꾸는 넘어도 같이 이내 수분 내내 이제 깨라요라고도 수수 지금 상만 봤던 거에 내요 말아 아니 주양 것도 수수 되버려도 이미 포스트할 때 지고 말아 이제 아니 다 분위기 집밥 상황이 있다면 이제 파시로 오지나는 아주 당연히 그 쉬는 사람들아 집밥 동법보다 이제 매기 진짜기 유다 아니 파기 온사기 거유다 라 파이미 나가서 쓰니까 어디를 집밥 당선 또 코스 의미 받는 거라 집밥이 뭐 땅. 라 그러나 저래도 하나는 거 근데 그런 남부터 봐 당시에는 뭐 딜지기 소리지 차세제 그런 게 파체는 수준 그래서 그들 그 대마마도 뭐 나와있는 정상적인 제가 예배 파신 날씨 근데 지금 내가 남도 나라서 이제 받아야 예배 파신 러비 쳐 가게 가고 봐 근데 저도 다른 땅 가서 예배 파신 날에 보내 가는 게 근데 이거 무슨 미미가 상관 땅 돼야 돼 집을 친구들이 다 그래서 자체 못 땅 보내면 가게 가고 나서 다음에 뭐 이제 제가 깨달을 따야로가 난 지금 내가 빠지지는 같이 지지해서 나도 레도 뜻을 모아라 이내한 남도 수수들 빵 강도지 자기 평생 거 한다고는 이제 뭐 하고 제가 집에 다시 마셔놔야 돼. 세대는 바로지.
Yes. So then all these discussion came from the question and answers or sharings about generosity, and then now how one should cultivate the practice of generosity, not the perfection of generosity, but how before we begin to understand the perfection of generosity, we need to understand how to practice generosity itself. So then we talked about how motivation is a very important factor. So also very important to remember that we need to be open-minded with our practices. So even in the case of generosity, when you say that we need to practice generosity, it doesn't mean that you need to let go of everything that you have. Like, do what you can, give what you can, with a pure motivation. This is the basis upon which we can learn to cultivate such a practice. So now, this is the general way in which we need to understand the practice of generosity. Now, when we're talking about the perfection of generosity, then it needs to be free from all forms of attachment, from all forms of expectation. So, in order to have such a pure act of generosity, then in the perfection of generosity, then it is explained that in that act, the three spheres in the act of generosity, the person who is giving, the thing or the thing that he is giving, and the person to whom he's giving, the the practitioner should look at all these three things as empty of inherent existence, to be empty of intrinsic nature, that they are not established, that they are that they are not established objectively, that there is no inherent existence in all these three things. And one begins to understand that, then all forms of identification, all forms of attachment, all forms of expectation is cut at their root, and then it becomes the perfection of generosity.
Could you name these three things again that we need to?
The person who is practicing generosity, then the act of generosity itself, which is the thing, the time that one spends, and then the receiver of this act of generosity. So at this point, when we hear terms such as empty of inherent existence, empty of intrinsic existence, empty of being truly established, then it might be a little bit difficult to wrap our head around this kind of statement. But we will explore this furthermore when we come to the perfection of wisdom itself. So then now to kind of wrap up our discussion about the different forms of generosity, then we can mainly understand the different forms of generosity as being three: the generosity of material things, the generosity of the teachings of the Dharma itself, and then the generosity of giving away one's own virtues or root virtues. So then when we're talking about generosity, I'm sorry, I repeat again. When we talk about practicing generosity, then one begins to let go. In the perfection of generosity, then one begins to let go of their own body, of their wealth and material possessions, as well as their virtues. So these are the manner in which one begins to cultivate the practice of generosity. So then maybe if it is a little bit too difficult to wrap our heads around the fact that we are advised to give away our body, then it is not an impossible thing, because we know that people who are suffering from kidney failure, liver failure, and so forth, they actually do receive kidney donations and so forth. So this constitutes the giving away your own body, or parts of your body in this case, or organ. And then the generosity of wealth and material possessions, I think all of us know. Now the most important is the generosity of giving away your root virtues, and generosity of giving away your virtues. So herein, it's an act of aspiration, and it's an act of dedication. So you pray that by accumulating all these virtues, may I be able to dedicate these virtues to the well-being of all sentient beings. So you're not only concerned about yourself and your own well-being, you begin to dedicate the virtues that you have, the good karma that you have accumulated, and the subsequent virtue that you accumulate for the sake of all sentient beings. So this constitutes a form of generosity too.
아니 심한 dur 가서는 차창은 자기들 시기 있다는 얘기 니그 마음에서 들어와이나 니 나오는 거야 지금 이라이다 대신 차이지 나오고
So then, as we say that giving away one's body, then in the nunnery, then sometimes we receive calls for help from hospitals, saying that they need that a particular patient needs blood. So whenever we get such calls, like 4 or 5 nuns immediately run to the hospital to donate blood. They do so because the blood has to match. So 4 or 5 of them run to the hospital to donate blood. So I'm sure these are examples that are not confined only to like a nunnery. They are like when you can think about like your own society and your own cultures. I'm sure these are already there. So we can try to understand giving away body from these examples.
미카시야 두루두다 미카시는 근데 슈다실 때데 두루두 나와지 이만 가시 간 샤샤이 두루만 못차 난데 생각을 루치니까 다마트네 조우디네 노부지네 딱 띵다 예 정말
So then giving away material possessions, I think the example you can think of your own, but a small example is like some really rich people, then they buy new clothes and they only wear it for like a week or a month and then they just throw it. So then it's better to kind of collect these clothes and then give it to people who really cannot afford clothes and who really are in need of clothes.
우리나라에 있는 음식들은 이는 갖다 합니다. 이네디 먼저 들리다. 강조기 들로도 좀 미제들은 자가 바로 나서 그러잖아요. 편도만. 그러니까 원는 데들이 먼저 들을지 아니 뭔가 쇼게 거는 전에 보아도 전에 약을 줘라. 이거를 이제 이 빵무 쪼디는 통도 안 가. 그러면요. 아니 이제 지쇼도 값대도 아니 그것이 뭔가 양배 정말 약간 양배 차요. 그거 좀 정말 가능한 것 스스로 돌려도 보들려 뭐야 이런 말. 나도 나도 보고 나도 보고 나도 비디 돌로 먹어요. 보들 지금 아까로 대신 이거 차야 막은 하리도 이니 뭐지 상스타일 때문에 거기 돌려도 하는 rollo 다 그냥 이래. 레마 저기들 전에 보여서 해서 이게 럽도 보고 나 저런 것도 이거 이거 할 때. 근데 그거는 할 때. 그리고 자가이 지가 리셔라고. 이치 따위 걸로 오늘 근데 이게 뭐라는 생각이라서 아니 이렇게도 어쨌나 누가 미셔를 말하고 버터치 티시 말하기 강라바니 키도 당연히 상을 고문이 가는 이 도로담도 다시 뭐 주요하게 같이 전부 같이 보고 담래요. 당연히 배 약간 좀 있죠. 어쩌서 고문이 제목은 제목 주는 것이 그런 거에 보고 도로병 거라든지 약간 좀 이름만 가는 말 때 이름만 먹어요. 그냥 본적이 가시게 대반에로 처음부터 루제죠. 가시 가라면서 근데 처음에 예쁜 택투 모습 여기 오셔야 저는 애들 강의에 친구 계속 저는 애들도 제가 로봇에 이렇게 친구가 너무 그런 서 대주 말에 정말 대주 그런데 사마라이들은 지기띠 고도막 많이 지기 때는 아니야 제발 미직들은 깔리 가거든 가시 혼이 처음에 이제 준신이 말해 이 로단을 마시리가 이 수신 알아야 돼 가시 지에 말아야 돼 들린다 저는 나한테 뮤지 샀어.
So then I would like to recount a personal experience. Now this is not to say that I am so good or I'm so generous, but when I was in Varanasi, there's a Tibetan college there for Buddhist studies. So then Varanasi is a place which is very hot in the summers and very cold in the winters. And as we go for a round in the stupa in the town, then I begin to notice that there are many people who are beggars, and they really are. Many of them were naked almost. They didn't have anything to wear, and they were wearing like plastic coverings or plastic wrappers on their head and body. So then I felt like they really need clothes, not only to like safeguard them from the elements, but also for a sense of dignity. They need clothes. So then I thought the clothes that I have wouldn't really help these people, like the monks and nuns robe. They are like red and yellow, and normal people wouldn't really wear them. So then in the school itself, in the college itself, there are many students, both male and female students. So then I asked them, like, if you have clothes that you're no longer wearing, then can you collect them? And I'm going to now give them to the beggars in the town. So then I received like 2 sacks of cloth donations from the students. And at that time I made the decision that, okay, I'm going to now go to the town and then start distributing these clothes. But that was a very foolish decision. I should have taken like someone to help me with them, with the distribution. Even though my intention was so pure, as I went to distribute it, then they began to mock me. And then some people were not only took like 1 cloth, they were taking like more than needed for themselves. So then I wasn't really able to distribute as I thought I would be able to distribute it. So even when my intention was pure and I was able to gather all these clothes, at the moment of actually giving it out to them, then like it wasn't really as I pictured it would be. So I would advise you that if you have this kind of intentions, then to really assess the situation wisely before and then take someone to help you with these things. Because they are really helpless. They do not, like out of the way, the harsh conditions in which they grow up and in which they survive. This is the way that they naturally approach things. So, yes, this is a personal experience that I